That's right. Welcome in. Welcome back, folks, to a Notre Dame playoff push preview featuring Chicago's very own Mr. Patrick Cotter. Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Edition of the Always Irish Show. We'll bring Pat in a second. First off, thanks for being here. If you have not yet, hit subscribe on YouTube. Give the video a thumbs up. That helps Johnny Boy out. Notifications on. You don't miss nothing. Twitter, search bar Always Irish or at Always Irish Inc. Emails alwaysirishnd@gmail.com. Audio only. Anywhere you want it, you can get it. If you don't want to see my face, trust me, nobody blames you for that. Call-in lines have been popping. It's playoff time, baby. 312-900-8815. Dialed up. Tell Uncle Johnny all you've heard and seen. Notre Dame Fighting Irish Football, brought to you by Sports Illustrated. Read all about it every day of your life. Patreon.com/alwaysirish. Jared Clark, Mike Goolsby spent a couple hours breaking down the offensive game film from USC last night. That was beautiful. Thanks to everybody who's jumped on for the playoff push. Promo code NDCFP at the checkout. We want as many people in on the playoff run as we could get. We're having a good time over there. Let's bring in the guest of the day here.
Johnny, how you doing, bud?
Here's
getting ready for some playoff football, Johnny.
Here's how I'm doing. I love, as a content creator / media guy here a little bit, I love how there's so much going on and it's all new territory to cover, to ponder about, to wonder about, to discuss, to debate. There's so much new ground here in the landscape. I'm finding it really quite adventurous. I like it.
I would say so. Everything is so wild right now.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many new things that are happening that I couldn't even predict that was going to happen. I mean, look at just the way the media is responding to this, with ESPN doing 2 game day shows back to back, one in South Bend and one in Columbus, Ohio. The astronomical prices it is to go to the game in South Bend versus the $70 you can get a ticket for the Penn State game. Like, this is just wild what's happening, and I'm excited to be a part of it and along for the ride.
Yeah, it's all new territory. And listen, there's going to be a lot of things. Here's my prediction. It's not a hot take. There's going to be a lot of things we all love about this new expanded playoff. There's bound to be some unintended consequences that we all find out, maybe some things that we would tweak or whatever. Like, you don't know till you have the data. This is all a brand new experiment. And the main point, the main takeaway from this is, I'm just glad Notre Dame's a part of it, Pat. That have and have not mattering group, the divide's bigger than ever now. If you're not in this 12, man, you are done and you do not exist. I'm really glad Notre Dame's planted their flag and they're a part of this discussion for the first go around. That was very important to me, and I'm glad they're doing it.
Not only that, John, but it obviously, yes, the being a part of it is fantastic for Notre Dame to be in this conversation, to see the pundits, the people who have dogged Notre Dame, and I'm not saying all of them, but I have seen plenty of articles about Notre Dame being people's picks to, if not win it outright, make it to the final game against Oregon. A lot of people are saying Notre Dame can beat Georgia, especially with Carson Beck out. So there's a lot. Obviously, I'm the first one to say, let's worry about Indiana, get past Indiana first. But just the situation in being here has already started to change the perception of Notre Dame football on a national scale.
That's interesting. And I want to get to that, about that narrative and where it's coming from, and what we should value from that, or what some of it we shouldn't. I want to get to that, but let me ask you a very, very simple question that'll lead to it. How important is this game for Notre Dame football and Marcus Freeman?
Well, the obvious importance is, if you don't win, you're done. And you didn't just come out of this football season where you lost to Northern Illinois after probably the biggest win of Marcus Freeman's career as a head coach in his short 3 years. You lose to Northern Illinois football, and then you had to completely rebuild this team's psyche, this team, just their respect, and you had to show you can dominate. You had to rebuild this football team over the next 11, 12 weeks or 13 weeks that they played football, to get to this point where people could actually consider you as, maybe Notre Dame's not all that bad. So if you lose today, if you lose on Friday night, the 20th, you just wasted all that. You just wasted all that. So from that aspect alone of showing that you could take this monumental wrong and turn it into the biggest right, that makes this game as critical as it can possibly be in terms of Marcus Freeman as a head football coach. And then just the playing in a playoff game, since the playoffs came around back when Brian Kelly was still the head coach of Notre Dame, and we made it there, we were always first one out. We lost, and typically lost in embarrassing fashion where everyone said we didn't belong. Now, I am one of those people that say, even when if we beat Indiana, nobody's going to come back and say, nobody's going to come back, oh, Notre Dame is the best team. It's not going to change the true national perception. I know I'm saying that, some people are starting to pick Notre Dame, but most people are still looking for Notre Dame to fail and to fail miserably. And then they want to continue to dunk on Notre Dame with it. So you can't give them that by losing this game. So that makes this game even more important for Notre Dame.
Yeah, the way I see it is there always, whatever the Notre Dame situation is, there always seems to be an extra kicker or an extra nuance layer or an extra flair to whatever the drama is with Notre Dame. There's always extra. And the extra I see for this one is pulling Indiana as your opponent. If you were to lose this game, that means you would be opening your home football season, giving a program that has no business doing it the biggest win in program history. And then you would be bookmarking it with one at the end of giving Indiana an in-state foe known for basketball. You would be giving them, with the new coach who's been there 2 days, you would be giving them the biggest program win they've ever had. And Pat, none of that winning streak means nothing if you allow that to happen. The entire narrative, the season's ruined. The entire narrative is going to be you got humiliated twice at home in front of everybody. That to me is like there's danger lurking on the menu if you decide to order it.
Yeah, I'm one to say that the Northern Illinois loss stopped mattering to me when Xavier Watts did the second pick six in a row for 100 yards against USC.
I get that.
It stopped mattering for me because at that point we knew Notre Dame was where they're going to need to be. But from a perception point of view, from a recruiting perspective, for Notre Dame to say they're back, you can't do this again. You cannot have somebody come into your house in December football in the house that Rockne built in a football game. And let me weave real quick here. In a football game that isn't in its position because of the way the bracket worked out. Notre Dame is the prime time Friday night game because it's Notre Dame. The very first 12-team playoff game in a home college football stadium is going to be at the house that Rockne built. That is not by accident. They want all eyes on South Bend, Indiana.
And another media layer to this is, correct me if I'm wrong, you're a Notre Dame historian, even a bit more than I am. I believe the first ever ESPN game day was Notre Dame, Florida State in '93 for On Location.
It was.
And now they're bringing it back here to South Bend again for the first playoff game. Like there is a lot here, but that's what I mean. You got a lot weaved into this here that's some big time stuff. And now let me be clear. I'm going to pick Notre Dame to win the football game. If they play solid football, they should win this game. Easily. I'm just saying a different kind of danger lurks for Notre Dame in round one than some other teams with the perceptual part of this and the in-state part of it. The recency of Indiana's resurgence while you're struggling for 30 years to win a major bowl game and they just pop up and here they are. There's a lot of things here that could crop up and get you if you're not careful. You just got to take care of business.
Yeah. So and so Notre Dame hasn't played Indiana since what, 1991?
91.
The last time. So Indiana football has not mattered to Notre Dame since 1991. Yeah. And you know what? And I saw your video that you posted this morning going off about that guy there, Signetti over there. Yeah.
If you got him, baby.
Signetti. He's got a guy. like I totally agree with where you're coming from with Cignetti and what he's doing what he's supposed to do, right? He's trying to make his program relevant.
Yeah, we're not scared of anybody, and we're not
Yeah,
backing down to nobody.
Right. And like the whole thing is like people, and I can imagine, because you even said it in your video, don't come after me at this because I'm, exactly what's he supposed to say? Oh, I'm afraid of Notre Dame. You're gonna look like a fool. Now, what I hope is that Notre Dame does make him look like a fool and blows their doors off.
Yeah.
But I don't care if Notre Dame does that. I just care that Notre Dame wins this football game. I don't care what it looks like. This is no longer about style points. Yep. The style points at this point comes with the W.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
That's the only thing that matters is the W. I don't care how it looks. Just get the W.
That's good. I think I actually wrote about this yesterday. I think the days are all blending in. And I said something about once this field got set and everybody got the seed they got and knew what the bracket was they were in, all the politicking over who looks better than who in this schedule and that schedule and these stats and this and that all means nothing anymore. The way I'm looking at it is everyone now is 0-0 and has no stats at all. Because now that it's seeded, none of what you did before, good or bad, matters. Like now it's just what's in front of you. And so that's all that matters. Let me ask you this. What is the difference between practical credibility and perceptual credibility? And what I mean by that is all Notre Dame needs to do is keep advancing, and you automatically get practical credibility by everybody around the sport because nobody can deny that. So if you beat Indiana, you get some of that. You beat Georgia, the more you advance, the more credibility you have.
Yeah.
But perceptually, you and I both know social media or whatever, it's all going to be, oh, we knew Indiana wasn't that good to begin with. That doesn't count. And then if you beat Georgia, it's going to be, well, they got their quarterbacks hurt, so you don't get credit for that. Play it out even further, Pat. If you go down the line in the bracket to match up with Penn State in our bracket then it's going to be, look at their bad game record. You don't even get, everybody beats them when it's a big game. So What do you got to do to get any perceptual credit if you're Notre Dame? Win it all, because that's what it looks like.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is what I said when I called in the other day.
3 rounds worth of excuses to downplay what Notre Dame's doing. 3 rounds worth. I just gave it to you.
Right. That's exactly what it is set up for. Now, I know there's a lot of conspiracy theory around, this bracket, and like they gave, Indiana, Notre Dame ends up with Indiana to stick it to Notre Dame. I don't care. I don't care. What I care about is Notre Dame is in. And if this bracket was set up to stick it to Notre Dame, they really f that up.
Yeah.
because if you can get past Georgia, I talk about not being afraid of anybody of those other 3 teams, the Penn State, SMU, or Boise State. I'm just not afraid of those teams. I might eat my words when we go and play them, and that's fine. It's the life we lead, but I'm just not. And so if this bracket would, like, if the Notre Dame fans are out there complaining about this bracket because they think the committee was trying to stick it to Notre Dame, making them the 7th seed and giving them Indiana and not putting us ahead of Penn State, all that stuff. Quit it. Just take this gift that you have, because you could be in there with the thick of it with Texas and Tennessee and Ohio State and Oregon. Like you.
Oregon does. How, Pat? Oregon does it. The only team that doesn't lose, they're the number 1 seed. And they have the toughest path going through the most talent.
Yeah.
It's a bad deal.
Yeah, it's almost, and then it's not like
Ohio State and Texas is talent on talent on talent.
Right. And let's say Tennessee goes in and ends Ryan Day's career. It's not like Tennessee has to go to Oregon to play the next game. It's a neutral site game that every fan base has access to, and that's another thing I was thinking about is like, it's not like we're going down to Athens, Georgia to play them. Now we're still going to Georgia. They're still going to play down in Georgia, but it's still a neutral site game, and the tickets are fairly cheap right now. So Notre Dame is going to represent if they get to that game. So it's all very. It does look more it just looks like it hurts that side of the bracket more than it hurts our side of the bracket. And yeah, does Notre Dame get lucky that Carson Beck gets hurt? Yeah, I would say. I mean, their starting quarterback is down. I was also never that impressed with Carson Beck. So, but I don't want to talk too much about Georgia. It's more about this Indiana game and this what this team needs to do to make sure that they get past it.
Yeah, I do think though, if I'm looking at raw, like skill athlete Twitch talent, there's more of it in the opposite bracket of Notre Dame.
Sure.
There's where it's where Texas and Ohio State and Tennessee and Oregon are. When you get into our half, I mean, it's Georgia and a big gap between them and everybody else. To me, in terms of roster, just raw athletes and talent, because you got Penn State and Notre Dame in there, and so it's one thing at a time, and it's dangerous to look ahead. But listen, the Georgia thing, man. I mean, we know the way they recruit, but this is not one of the top and an unbeatable Georgia with the defense you can't even have a chance of moving the ball against. This ain't that. This is not that. So I think you got a chance here if you just do your job.
Right. And that's what I think when we there obviously there is talent on that roster. There's talent on Texas. There's talent on Ohio. There's $20 million worth of talent on Ohio State. We know these teams are loaded.
Look where it got them so far.
Yeah, look where it got them. We know these teams are loaded. The question I have, though, is how much parity? Well, we know from the recruiting rankings that NIL is adding parity.
Mm-hmm.
The top 25 kids in the country used to go to it. I think I don't have that stat in front of me, but I think it was breaking out to like the same. You would get 25 kids going to 8 different schools on average every year. The top 25 kids were going to 8 different schools. And usually it was Alabama and Ohio State and Georgia were on the top of that list. And then LSU when Brian Kelly wasn't there. Sorry, I had to throw that in there. But now that doesn't happen anymore. I mean, they had 1 year. There was 1 year in recruiting where each one of the top 10 kids rated on Rivals went to a different school. And that hasn't happened since Rivals started. So there's parity in recruiting now because of NIL. And then taking the next step, the transfer portal. Everyone talks about Indiana brought in all these kids. The new coaches, they bring in kids to fill all their holes until they can build up their recruiting, right? But that means kids are leaving all these teams. So Georgia has a bunch of kids that are going into the portal right now. Ohio State does. Tennessee does. I read an article yesterday about Tennessee players being pissed off about guys jumping ship right before the Ohio State game, like, hey, we might need you. So there is more parity now in college football because of the things we hate. I hate NIL. I hate the transfer portal. But it is actually leveling the playing field in a way we haven't seen before.
That's so interesting, though, Pat, that a lot of people feel disgusted by like the procedure of it and the raw transactional nature of it. But the actual intended consequence at the back end when it's all leveled out actually may be exactly what people were asking for all along. It's just ugly looking at. We just don't always love the process.
It's ugly looking, and so all these kids that they sit and they grow a chip on their shoulder and then they jump ship to go somewhere else, and all of a sudden when you're Georgia and you got that stud 5-star defensive tackle who is getting ready to go to the NFL after his junior year, and you got that sophomore right behind, all of a sudden that sophomore's gone.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to sit 2 years.
Yeah. And
have to wait, or he didn't want to play 20% of the snaps. So there's just a lot of that happening in college football now. And so I don't, the only school that I really don't know, because I don't really hold the Big Ten and it's a high opinion. So the only school I'm really not comfortable with saying is if they're really what they are or not is Oregon. I just don't know. They have some size. They have a ton of speed. They've always had a ton of speed. So that's the school I can't really put my finger on. Would I still say I think Georgia's a better team pound for pound, player for player? Yeah, probably, than Notre Dame. But I think Notre Dame is a team that can, with the momentum, as Lou said, you don't have to be the best team in the country. You just got to be the best team in the stadium that day. And I think they're a team that can put it together and win that football game.
What do you make about this? There's a couple things I've thought about, and I want to acknowledge here. I am not overlooking Indiana, counting that as a win, whatever, but we're having a discussion about the bracket, Notre Dame.
This is about the bracket.
I want people to understand that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful and set ourselves up and overlook this. But
no, I don't need Cincinnati. I don't need to get whacked.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That Signetti guy, he's a friend of ours. And so I'm like, you know what? Speaking of that, I was watching the Frank Collada. I love watching old Frank Collada before he died. His old
Rest in peace. Yeah,
sometimes I go down that rabbit hole on YouTube. I'm like,
I do too.
tell me more about Frank the German Schweiss, okay? like, who do you know about Mad Sam Di Stefano? Let me know.
Yeah. Oh, Mad Sam, man, don't ever drink his coffee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no kidding. But anyways, here's what I'm thinking about this Georgia thing. Number one is, I do respect the recruiting, obviously. The other part of this is that staff is probably the number one staff now that Saban's gone that you trust to prepare for a big moment. Now you're giving Kirby all this time to be able to sit there. Oh, he's going to cook something up. And that is a good staff and a top-notch head coach now that has been in this moment. He'll have that is maybe one area where the bye helps because he's going to be prepared.
So let's look at that because I think Dan Lanning is the best head coach in the country right now. I'm not saying he's better than Kirby, but he's just got it at a point where he's really firing. I wanted to talk to you about this after he played Michigan. Did you see the story where he called the timeout during the Michigan game and had his players turn and watch the big house empty and say, this is us stepping on their necks? That's the kind of guy I want to run my program. Yeah. And so, and especially because he did it to Michigan, it makes it all the better. So I really like Dan Lanning. I'm a fan of Dan Lanning unless Notre Dame plays him. I've always been a fan of Kirby Smart. I always thought Kirby Smart was a smart coach, a good coach. And obviously he's shown it, but I don't like him if Notre Dame's playing him. But those I think are the pinnacle of college football. So I think if anyone's going to have a team ready, it's going to be those guys. And then also don't sleep on Dabo. Don't sleep on Dabo. Dabo, he knows how to get his team. Yeah, he's had a kind of rough couple of years, but he knows how to get a team ready for a big game. And he showed Notre Dame that last year. So Notre Dame, so anybody, you're playing Clemson. I think that's the Texas game. I don't dislike Sark, but I don't think he's as good as those three guys I just mentioned.
Yeah, and I'm with you with Dabo. It's on shaky ground, and it isn't on cruise control like it was.
Right.
But at any time, he could put it all together and have one of those performances where you're like, damn it, that's an A Clemson Dabo performance, like postseason game. You never know when he's going to turn the switch. So it isn't cruise control at that level like it was. But you never know when that week's going to be where he turns that on. And last year it was against us. And
against us. And I like Dabo as a coach. I think he's a guy that can get his team ready for the big game. I don't think he gets past Texas. I think Texas is just too good. Dabo has gone too long rejecting NIL in the transfer portal.
They're lucky they got in this and they backed into it because of Miami's failure and all that. Like this is a bonus opportunity for them.
I mean, that's the only 3-loss team, or does Arizona State have 3 losses? I don't remember.
I think so. I thought they only had
he's the only 3-loss team that made it in there. But even so, but that's another thing with this bracket, and I don't understand how you can give Arizona State. I get what they're doing. The conference championship game, they don't want the conference championship game to go away. But all the teams coming out of the conference championship games, especially not next year, but the year after when they go to the 16-team format, the conference championship game is going to end up going away because you can't.
So, man, even with the media and the money and all that, you think it's going to go away?
They're going to add 4 more playoff games, so they're not going to lose the money. They're not going to lose the money, and it's going to be the Big Ten and the SEC are not going to want to beat each other up. But look at the conferences. I would hold the SEC up here. And sorry, Renee, John's main man, Manny. I don't. Or Martinez. I'm not an SEC ass kicker by any stretch of the imagination, but I still think they're the pinnacle of college football because I don't think the Big Ten has ever been what anyone says the Big Ten is.
And then it's certainly not going to be any other conference.
A Pac-12 team that's never been in their conference just won their conference championship.
Yeah.
A Pac, and here's another thing. An AC a Mountain West team almost won the ACC championship, and a Pac-12 team just won the Big 12 championship. So, but granted, the Pac-12 actually lost their two best teams to the SEC.
Do
But
they redo this automatic buy, automatic seeding thing? Is that one of the calibrations they make to where how can you look at the SEC champion the same way as BYU? You know what or Boise?
That's the whole thing. You can't.
In Arizona, you got an SEC champion, and then you got Arizona State at the same level as them, and people are just having a hard time respecting that. I guess.
And I agree. I agree with that because I just don't think I don't think Arizona State is as good as well. I mean, Georgia's even as Texas. I don't get me wrong.
Yeah,
I actually think if somebody was going to ask me my sleeper team, I would actually say Arizona State over Notre Dame because I think Arizona State. Again, I'm picking Notre Dame, but I think Arizona State is peaking at the right moment.
And they're totally going to fly under the radar. Nobody's going to give them a chance to because you could you're Arizona State.
The worst thing that happens to Arizona State is they have this bye. If they kept playing, if they had the next game, they probably be okay. They're that kind of team that just needs to keep playing. But this long break might hurt them when their next opponent doesn't have one. And I think that's also going to hurt Georgia. I know Kirby Smart was spouting to the SEC chairman or whatever about them having to play or them finally getting a break after playing the schedule they had. But at the same time, sometimes you just need to play football, and sometimes your team gets into a rhythm and they just need to keep playing football. Yeah. That's why I do like where Notre Dame is at. I do like the fact that Notre Dame doesn't have a bye. They're going to have a long break anyways. They had their bye. It's called the Conference Championship week. And then they just need to keep playing football. So I do like that position. And also, as far as Notre Dame's seed, where they're at, the ranking versus the seed, they were ranked 4th and they're going to, or 5th, and they're going to be the 7th seed. You know what? At the end of the day, we got to take our medicine and say we earned it because we left room for doubt. You want to be the 5th seed, you got to be undefeated.
See, it was the next question I had on my list. I'm glad your brains were right where mine is. While we were having this discussion, I was going to say, what does it take for Notre Dame to get the 5 based off what we've learned about how this committee views conference championships, not wanting to penalize teams that lose in them? What do you got to do to be the 5? Be 12-0 and you're the 5?
I think there's a difference between an 11-1 Notre Dame where their losses to Texas A&M versus an 11-1 Notre Dame where their losses to Northern Illinois.
Yeah. But
see, I don't know how you can't. I don't know how someone cannot come to that conclusion.
But that's also kind of messed up in a way conceptually to me. Because you could essentially end up saying we would be better off without our best win. Like you were right in a way. If you
don't get me wrong.
If you lost to A&M, think about it. If you lost to A&M in a physical game and that Heat lost by a field goal, and then you blow out Northern by 30, you end up 11. The rest of everything goes the same. You end up 11-1, and nobody's looking at a loss to A&M as like the worst thing in the world.
Because then you're talking about a 9-3 A&M team that.
Man,
just missed out on an SEC championship game. So everyone's giving you respect because you hung in with Texas A&M. But the easiest way to do it, like I said, like Lou Holtz says, don't leave it to the officials, right? Leave no doubt. Don't leave it to the officials. You left it to the officials. If you handle your business in September, you don't have to worry about it in December. But you didn't. So you have Notre Dame fans have no room to complain the fact of where we ended up in the bracket. And I still we should be saying thank you for where we ended up in the bracket, because if we were the 5th seed, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what that bracket will end up looking like. It'll be a lot harder.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I just think you got an opportunity here if you're Notre Dame, and you better take advantage of it. And all eyes are on you. Everybody, the most Notre Damiest thing in the world would be to fail in this moment, like you've been doing for 30 years in the postseason. This needs to all be different, Pat. I continually write and talk about what Notre Dame coach and team is going to be the one that says enough is enough. We're done with all that stuff. This is new Notre Dame. We're not getting ran over in the postseason. We're gonna force you to respect us. Like one of these Notre Dame coaches and teams needs to be it. Why can't it be this one?
Yeah, I agree. That's what I've been saying. It's like the proverbial Cub fan. Every year, it's always next year. It's always next year. Well, I'm a Notre Dame fan, and I want to know why it can't be this year.
Yeah.
I heard you talking not that long ago about our Mexico trip and the 2012 BCS game. And I was thinking back, and I remember sitting there, and we were all sitting around on the beach having some Modelo's talk. Well, you were having a Miller Lite, but and we're all talking about how we think Notre Dame was going to win and stuff like that. And there was something I didn't know at that time when we were having that conversation. And what I didn't know was that when given a chance, Brian Kelly will let you down. What I'm not sure of right now, and I'm still waiting to see. But even with the Northern loss, he's overcome. So I can't say that Marcus Freeman is going to let me down. I see, and it just comes back to there's so much effort. It's just so different. It's just so different how everything is done with Freeman. Yes, does it suck that he doesn't have the 30 years of prior head coaching experience? Yeah, obviously that has hindered him. But is this the best Notre Dame football team I've probably ever seen? Yeah. Maybe that 2015 team that was also squandered. But this is the best Notre Dame football team I can remember. I mean, I guess I do remember parts of the 93 season, just the best part and the worst part. But
yeah,
it's I do think that this team has enough talent, raw talent, and quality coaching that it makes me say, why can't they? Yeah. And then I look at the rest of college football, and I look at the rest of the 12 teams out there, and I say, why can't they beat that team? Like I said,
did it take you a while to get there, though? You had the week 2 thing where you're like, where is this all at? Is this falling apart?
Well, that's exactly what it was.
They won back everybody's trust week by week, and then by the end of it, you're like, everybody's vulnerable. What the hell's going on here?
Everybody's vulnerable. And like I said, the only team that hasn't looked vulnerable is Oregon, and they looked vulnerable because they almost lost to Wisconsin, right? So even they have looked vulnerable.
Their defense looks like you could get after them a little bit.
Yeah. But when it comes to this Notre Dame football team, obviously, do you remember in 12 when we went to the Miami game?
I certainly do, because you could buy beer because it was at the Pro Stadium. Of course, I remember.
Yes. So. Do you remember how that game opened?
On the way home on the Chicago post-game radio show.
Do you remember how that game started?
Yeah.
2 giant bombs to wide open Miami receivers that were dropped. And I thought, oh my God, Notre Dame does not have the speed to play football with this team. And Notre Dame ended up blowing them out because they adjusted to the speed. And then I watched that USC game, and I was like, you know what? USC is just throwing darts to these sophomore and freshman. They're throwing darts at these sophomore and freshman cornerbacks. And I went back and watched that game again because I wasn't totally sure what I was comprehending at the time. That quarterback was putting the ball in like the perfect spot every time. Those were great. There were times where guys were open, but usually the defender was there in play.
Especially those sideline balls. They were all put right where only their guy could make a play.
He was dropping dimes. Notre Dame's got to worry about that quarterback for the future.
Until those pick sixes, of course.
Until those pick sixes came up. But that's the thing though. Like eventually that quarterback made a mistake and Notre Dame made it pay for it. Yeah. And I liken that game to the way that Miami game opened in 2012. Notre Dame hasn't seen up until that point a quarterback who could do that. And receivers who could run like that.
Yeah.
And so Notre Dame had to adjust.
Might be the best thing that could happen to end this year.
I think it was the best thing that could happen to them because now these guys saw some speed.
After a 9-game win streak against questionable talent where you're blowing teams out, it may be the healthiest thing ever for those guys to go, oh, yeah, this is what a twitchy athlete out here looks like.
Yeah. It was a little humble pie. Yep. It was a little humble pie. And it was humble pie where you actually got to eat the whole thing too. And it was and still enjoy it. Like, that's what they talk about. Like always a win in the first week of the year is the best thing to have because you get to go and pick apart the film. But on a win. You get to do it on a win. And so I'm hoping that's what the coaches did to these guys and say, you were out of position here. You got to do this. You got to do that and take them through a whole bunch of stuff and say, if you did this differently, this isn't going to be an issue when you see this kind of a talent again, which I believe won't be till Georgia.
Were you Were you a little frustrated with the lack of pressure our defensive front was getting against USC?
Terribly frustrated. I watched the game with my dad, and my dad thinks the only way you win a football game is by hitting a quarterback. So all I heard the entire game, no pressure on the quarterback, no pressure on the quarterback, no pressure on the quarterback, all game long. And then they finally did put a pressure on him, and he threw that pick six at Xavier Watts. I think they had one sack before that the entire game. That guy. Now the game plan for USC was get the ball out quick. So that was a part of it. And that guy, like I said, that guy was just throwing the ball well. But I think Notre Dame, they're going to need to. I don't think Indiana is going to be. Well, see, okay, we got to be careful here because Indiana saw it too with Ohio State. They saw what their vulnerabilities were. Mm-hmm. So now we know what their vulnerabilities are. So it would be they always like to say it's a very Notre Dame-y thing. It would be a very Notre Dame-y thing for us to come back and now be able to get pressure on the quarterback because one team learned from their mistakes and we just assumed we could do what another team did. So I don't want to say we are definitely going to get pressure on the quarterback, but if I'm
cross back, and I do want to mention that does change the dynamic along Notre Dame's defense front, just getting cross back. So hopefully if he's healthy and back, that adds a dimension that helps all of that.
We get cross back, but we don't have KVA. And I think that I think that hurts more than cross coming back helps. Yeah. But the whole thing, if I'm El Golden, I am not relying on my down four to make sure I'm getting pressure. I'm gonna come out hot with the blitzes. I'm coming out hot with the blitzes. I'm not letting this guy get a look, and then maybe dial him back if he's got a long third down, dial him back. Let's see if the defensive ends can pin their ears back and go.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting. When I look up some of the statistics here, both of these teams are in the top 6 in points scored, points allowed, winning differential, all that stuff. They're really, really similar, Pat. And then you look at the strength of schedules, and they're pretty
very similar.
Both not impressive. So something's got to give, Pat. Somebody's going to realize they're not as good as they thought they were all year. Somebody's going to realize they're just not as good as they thought. That's the only way this could go.
And the only reason I lean on Notre Dame as a team realizing they're the better or showing that they're the better is because they do have top 10 recruiting classes. They do have the offensive and defensive linemen who can go.
They should be a more mature program or something's wrong. This is Freeman's third year. You're getting situated, all that. Like the Signetti thing, the immediacy of it all bothers me because it's just like I showed up and everything's going so easy and great. Here we are. That bothers me. It's good for them, but it's frustrating to me.
I did something I never do. I went and I consumed a bunch of YouTube media, a bunch of all these different podcasts. I never really do anything other than yours, unless you send me something to watch. But I found myself looking at a bunch of other shows, and I found something with I think it was On3, and they were talking about, is Signetti a better coach than Marcus Freeman? And the guy gave a very, very good take, but it also made me like, son of a bitch, he's right. And his take was, if Signetti builds a football team in 1 year through the transfer portal that could go into Notre Dame Stadium in December with all the lights, the biggest football game of both coaches' careers, both teams, all the players. This is the biggest game any of them has ever played in.
Yep.
And the Indiana is built off the transfer portal. Notre Dame is built off with spots from the transfer portal, but 3 years of solid recruiting for Marcus Freeman. If Signetti can go in and win that game, Signetti is a better coach. Like I don't even think you can argue that, because how can you say that Marcus Freeman has been recruiting and building this program the way he says he wants to for 3 years, and then he loses to a team that's built off the transfer portal?
The only comeback I have to that is it a cop-out if you just said not enough data, too soon to make that determination off one outcome, let's see how it goes? Or let's measure 3 years. Let's measure 3 years of Signetti with 3 years of Freeman. Or do you think if they're matching up, it's fair to look at it this way?
I think if they're matching up, it's fair. We have enough data off Marcus Freeman. I mean, Signetti's been around as a coach. We know he's successful. So we know that. So I think it's very easy to say that if he can build a winner at Indiana in 1 year, and he could beat Notre Dame in that 1 year versus what Marcus Freeman has been trying to do over 3 years, That I'm not saying there's a problem with Marcus Freeman. Understand what I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm 100% in that Marcus Freeman. I'm just saying that if Cignetti can do that, it's either this guy is everything he says he is, or Marcus Freeman still has a long way to go.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. One more thing I wanted to bring up, because in retrospect, now that it doesn't look like it's going to be as big of a deal as I built it up to be, I want to know the realities. What do you think the realities of the whole weather in South Bend thing are? Do you think it would have been a big advantage if you had a warm weather team coming up there? Do you think it would have been a little bit of an advantage? Or my thought is, there is a line with that winter weather where it gets so crappy, it doesn't help anybody and everybody's kind of limited. What are your thoughts on that? Because I in theory, wanted Notre Dame to catch a warm weather team so they'd be all miserable, we'd enjoy it and all that. And we're not getting that. What are the realities?
Well, I wanted that too, because number one, I wanted to see it. But also, so I was big on this with you too. But then I thought about, well, look back at the Texas A&M game. Do you remember the fights, the arguments that were breaking out in your chat over, you got to acclimate to the weather. You got to be there. You got to be in that heat for at least 10 days prior to.
Remember when I was yelling about welcome to boot camp and all that?
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, exactly. And so we heard all that. And then Notre Dame went in there. Notre Dame was the team that looked like they were better ready for the heat.
Fourth quarter, Notre Dame was the one who outlasted them in their heat.
Notre Dame looked like the team that was practicing down in that heat all summer long.
Yep.
Now that is a very different dynamic than bitter cold. Yeah, because when you hit in bitter cold, growing up in Chicago and playing in the Chicago Catholic League and playing football in Chicago Catholic League, it hurts more when it's super cold out.
What about, I can also feel my extremities in the heat.
Exactly.
It's just a little different.
Yeah. You're not worried about cramping in the cold, but you're worried about feeling your feet. Yeah. Your feet are numb. So that does make a difference. At the end of the day, though, let's say it was Bama coming up here. The cold would only play a factor if Notre Dame jumped out to a big lead. That's only so if Notre Dame had two quick scores and we're up 14-0, I could see some Bama kids like, man, I'm going in the portal next week anyways. What the hell do I care?
This decision, I ain't taking this hit. I don't need this extra.
I don't need this. Exactly. Yeah. I don't need this because they're cold.
By the way, Pat, whoa, time out. Do you agree with the decision to leave Alabama out? You think they did the right thing there, leaving that?
Absolutely. Alabama did not deserve to be in.
If you want to rip this committee for anything they did or didn't do, I think almost everybody outside Alabama is in agreement. You did something good and gave somebody else a chance. 3 losses against some of those teams is too many.
I don't like how they did it, taking a 3-loss Clemson over them, but at least Clemson won a championship game.
Yeah, and that was in the bylaws. Like that one,
right. Alabama, the SEC agreed to it, so I don't want to hear the SEC crying about it.
Minor thing here. That's a part of the issue conceptually with the way they're doing the brackets is the theory that all of those conference winners are going to be really good teams. That's the theory, but in practicality, you got Clemson there. Nobody thinks it. So that's kind of a difference between in theory and the practicality. All right, back to what you were saying. Weather.
Yeah, the weather. So, but if you had a tight game, you had a Notre Dame Alabama tight game, and it's 24-21 going into the fourth quarter. No, I don't think the weather would matter at that point. When you're going that far into it, I don't think anybody cares that they're cold. They got a chance to win. So the weather only matters is if you can punch them in the mouth quick, and that team realizes they got nothing to play for versus everything else.
You have been to a lot of Notre Dame games. I've been to a lot of Notre Dame games. We've been to some together. The Stanford game in 2012 rings in. That's probably the pinnacle.
We were at a couple games together in 2012, Johnny.
That's probably the pinnacle, though. We did the Miami one in 2012. That was a good one, but that Stanford one was special. The way that ended and the weather was horrible. That was an experience. You couldn't get that cigar to stay lit in the parking lot. My dad still talks about that. He goes, every once in a while, man, I think about that randy-looking cigar Pat had in the parking lot. It was all wet and dripping, and he says every once in a while, I think about that stogie Pat had.
I was committed. I think my favorite part was that my wife and your mom went to go watch the game inside, and so I got to go sit with you guys.
It was beautiful. But my point with this is, here's an angle on the weather that I did want. It would have been a cathartic bonding experience for the Notre Dame fan base to have a warm weather team come in there in bad cold weather. And we're all like in it together. Like, I don't bring on the cold. We love it. Like, there's a kind of a catharsis there of we're all going to just have fun. We all know it's cold, but we're not as miserable as they're going to be. And we're all in this together. There would have been like a communal bonding of, we know it's cold, but we're not going to let it bother us, but we know it's bothering them. Let's all get wild. There would have been some of that vibing as a collective. And that excited me as a unique little angle of this, knowing we would love it and they would hate it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think if you're going to look at the weather in the aspect it would play, we'll see the aspect that's playing out, because I do have a really big fear that there's going to be a lot of red in that stadium. And from what we're hearing from ticket purchases, all coming from the fan base we've never heard from before, there's going to be a lot of red there, because like you said, it's a drive. It's like us going there for them to go there.
I don't know what to expect, man. I've vacillated on this between how much of that percentage I expect, and then the tickets spiked and then came back down. Them coming down, what does that indicate? Like, I just don't know what this market is doing.
I'm on there right now, and tickets are going for the lowest seat for Notre Dame right now on SeatGeek, which is Notre Dame's official provider, is $528. For Texas, the lowest ticket on theirs is $101. On Ohio State, their lowest ticket is $214. And Penn State's lowest ticket is $76.
Is that just because of the opponent draw doesn't entertain people, or what?
Ohio State has Tennessee. Texas has Clemson. You got a Big Ten, SEC, and a Big like. I get Penn State has SMU. That definitely has to do something to deal with some of it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, you got to. If they did anything right, they put Notre Dame on Friday night, and I think they knew what they're doing when they put Indiana against them, because let's make sure that they're driving this price up. They're getting this place packed. They're getting this place rowdy. Game day is going to be there on Friday. They've never done I don't think they've ever done a show like this before. We're going to do back-to-back days, and the kickoff of this is at Notre Dame. That's not on accident. They wanted Notre Dame in there. They wanted this game to be in South Bend, Indiana.
And you know what else is good about it on a selfish level for people like us? With this being Friday, you don't lose the whole day of viewing all the other games Saturday. If Notre Dame played Saturday, you would miss all the other action. So if Notre Dame wins, this is glorious, because you would have the win in your pocket and then 3 great games to watch Saturday. It would be an unbelievable little run. I got one more thing for you, Pat, and I got to hit you with this like a ton of bricks on the way out. Is this a big enough game you've come around to admit if Notre Dame wins it, it counts and it knocks out the 30-year post-game big losing streak? Have you come around to that yet?
No.
So it's got to be round 2?
Yeah. Yeah, I think so.
I think we're going to just disagree on this.
We can. That's fine. The opponent matters, John. The opponent matters. I
think that's where I think that's where I look at this as things have changed. It may not be called the Sugar Bowl or whatever, but life has changed. And now in the new scenario, a playoff game where everybody's saying it's the biggest game we've had in forever, whatever. How can it not, if you win it, then knock off your 30-year big game losing streak in the postseason?
Yeah, because if you win it, you have your next biggest game ever.
Yeah, but there's nothing you could do about that. So then we can never talk about this again, because Notre Dame just doesn't play one bowl game and they play 4. So that old discussion's dead.
So if you beat Indiana, then you beat Georgia. I'll give you whatever you want on that one.
I think I'm struggling with, how can it be the biggest game? Everybody's got to win. And then if you do it, oh, by the way, but it doesn't count as the biggest game. You're either pregnant or you're not pregnant. Wait, I don't know. It either is or it isn't.
Yeah, it's because like I said, it's not. I hope I hope they're not doing a blackout. I hope they're treating this as
I don't
a
even know what
home
that
game in
means.
December.
How does a team that's blue and gold and green have a blackout to begin with?
I don't know.
Darth Vader uniforms or what? We're going to kill all of our tradition in the biggest game in this stadium, and then we're going to decide to change everything? Come on, Frank's going to be there. You got to honor some tradition.
I totally agree, John. This is the biggest game that Notre Dame has faced in a long time, but I think there's more downside. The upside is tremendous. Don't get me wrong. The upside is tremendous because you have a chance to win a national championship. You can't win a national championship if you don't win this game. But if you lose this game, you are the laughing stock of college football.
Where does that leave you, Pat? On the way out, I think we have an obligation to discuss that. Everything's fun to talk about on the high end. Should Notre Dame fall in this situation, it is hard to take anything positive out of this year. Like, it would be an 11-1 on the record and no one would feel like it was progress. That's just how it would feel. There's paper and there's how the perception and what you would feel. The country's going to mock us for it, and our own fan base, they're not going to feel progress, even with an 11-1 regular season. They're not.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think that's fair. I guess I said it to begin.
It's the way it's going to be. I didn't say it was fair or not.
No, agreed. But I myself said at the beginning of the season that this is year 3. No more excuses. This is the year you win a national championship. So thankfully, Freeman is still where he needs to be to get to that point, and I think he's got a path to do it. So I like to see him do it. I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to call for his firing like some fans have for stupid stuff, but it's at the same time, it's like, okay, you got to do it in your first 3 years. That's the standard we have set, right? We always talk about what's our standard. Our standard is you're going to win a championship in the first 3 years.
You know what else I think about too is, however far Notre Dame could advance in this tournament, it'll be, additional feathers in the cap, whatever. But you're doing it not even near full health in a lot of areas. You've been banged up since all the way going back to August. You have a lot of those injuries. And here's the other thing, Pat. I don't think any Notre Dame fan feels like, man, what a well-rounded, totally, you got everything going for this team. This is the Notre Dame team. You got it. The offense is beautiful. The passing offense, the run defense, everything's trending up. Like, Notre Dame is a flawed team and an injured team, and they're still doing what they're doing. That impresses me because it shows me there's room on the upside to get even better. This is not the pinnacle. It's a beat-up team and a flawed team. This is not near what the ceiling of Notre Dame should be. That encourages me.
I would. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It goes back into the quarterback argument that we were having a couple weeks ago. We're going to have probably one of the best offensive lines we've seen at this team, where it's actually put together. Yeah. Where it's actually put together, where you're going to have some young returning starters with experience, or guys who should, who are coming back from injury, who missed out, but have a very high upside. And then you got what I think are 2 of the best running backs in the country. You got 2 guys who I think one guy is definitely a top 5 or top 3 running back in the country, and you got another guy that's a top 10 running back in the country. So it really just comes down to the quarterback room. But there's such an upside for this team, and if you stayed healthier on the defensive side of the ball, I would be really, really interested to see how this plays out. But we got to beat Indiana first before we start worrying about anything else.
Yeah. Yep. So I don't know, Pat, these are exciting times. This is all new territory. I'm thrilled Notre Dame's part of it. You and I are both fortunate enough. We're going to be in the building. And so this is just, it's so new. It's just never happened before. And it's all kind of just, everybody's flying by the seat of their pants, and it is first time for everything. And here we go. So this is going to be an adventure, and hopefully a good one for us. Do you have anything on the way out? This has been fun, man.
I'm good, Johnny. Let's go Irish. Let's get this W and worry about the next one.
There you go. Let's beat that Signetti guy.
So John, I'll see you on the 50-yard line.
Oh yeah, we're going to be right there, unless we can get up into Adam Dowling's suite there, where the heaters are, the crab legs and the heaters. Man, that's where I'm trying to get to. All right, everybody, have a good one. Thanks for being here.